A good memo is brief, clear, and actionable. In fast-paced work environments, where decisions must be made in minutes, a good memo is not just a document, it's an action-orienting tool.
It does not merely inform, it directs. Unfortunately, many memos become walls of words, causing more confusion than clarity.
This doesn't just waste time, it damages organizational performance. A good memo is strategic minimalism. Every word exists for operational intent.
You don't write a memo to be praised for good writing. You write it so the reader acts correctly and fast.
A good memo is not where you display the complexity of the issue. It is where you simplify complexity so others can make a quick decision.
Yet a common paradox is, the smarter the writer, the more cluttered the text. That's because they write to showcase their thinking rather than serve the reader's action.
In today's work culture, memo writing is behavior design. You're drawing a path for others to follow, not so they're impressed by you, but so they don't get lost.
When you write with it in mind, you cut the long openings, avoid power phrases like "as you may be aware," or "the general context is," and instead say, "please confirm by Friday 5 p.m.
Brief, clear,
Actionable.
no poetry, no fog. Cognitive psychology shows that the clearer a message, the more control the reader feels, and the more likely they are to act.
A memo, then, is not just language, it is a trigger of decisiveness.
And great leaders are those who design clarity with every sentence.
Brevity is not cutting down, it's curating.
It's the art of deep thinking within horizontal limits.
An effective memo doesn't try to say everything, it says just enough to trigger meaningful action.
In administrative communication, the fewer the words, the clearer the objective.
But to achieve this, the writer must think like a designer, not just a reporter.
Writing a memo is like programming. If your command is vague, the system fails.
Saying "please proceed as planned" may sound polite, but it's vague.
Instead, download the attached file and reply by 9 a.m. Tuesday is executable. Clear, simple, complete.
In functional linguistics, every sentence should carry a behavior trigger, an action verb plus condition.
Without it, the memo becomes narration, not instruction. Great communicators don't make readers guess, they let them know exactly what to do, when and why. And that ability to write less but sharper, that's the highest signal of organizational clarity.
A common misconception: the clearer the message, the colder it feels.
But in fact, clarity is kindness.
When you write clearly, you show respect for the reader's time, attention, and mental bandwidth. A confusing memo doesn't just confuse, it alienates.
In organizational psychology, clarity is part of psychological safety.
When people don't know what to do or interpret things differently, tension and conflict arise. A clear memo doesn't just share information, it sets boundaries, expectations, and coherence.
Great memo writers know words are how organizations care for collective behavior.
They don't write long, they write clearly, so no one has to guess, fear, or be left out. Every line of clarity is a small act of kindness, like giving directions in a foreign city. Not many words, just the right ones. An effective memo is like a PI-coded sequence of decisions. Each sentence corresponds to one step of decision-making. If you begin with a long explanation without offering a clear goal, the reader doesn't know what they're reading for. This leads to cognitive drift, a state of mental directionlessness.
A good memo must follow a logical chain. 1 clear objective, 2 brief context, 3 proposed action, 4 time or condition, 5 response method. These are the behavioral laws hidden beneath language.
Skip any of these, and your memo feels like an unfinished conversation.
In project management, mismatch between content and structure causes most delays.
A good memo isn't a commentary, it's a behavioral map.
Writing that way doesn't require length, only order.
That's when language becomes a decision model, not just prose.
Many see memos as mere announcements, but in reality, every memo contains behavioral contracts.
When you write a line, you're speaking on behalf of the organization and offering a promise.
Please submit by Friday is not a suggestion, it's a due commitment. The sender promises follow up, the recipient promises action.
Thus, memo writing is not just a linguistic task, it's a display of organizational ethics. A company with strong memo culture is a company of high accountability. They don't let language float, each line shapes behavior, with both parties fully present. When a company fails to write clear memos, it's losing its ability to bind by word, a foundation of internal trust. A good memo isn't just communication, it's the organization's reliable map in motion. A leader can't be everywhere, but they can appear in every sentence.
And the memo is exactly where that happens.
A good memo is not just administrative language, it is the embodiment of leadership style. When you write clearly and concisely, you say, "I respect your time and mine." When your title points to action, you say, "I value effectiveness."
In organizational communication, great leaders steer through words. They know when to speak, when to pause, and when to delegate. Writing a memo is a form of remote leadership. Each sentence, each directive builds culture. Leadership language doesn't need to be strong, it needs to be precise. When speech becomes a trigger for action rather than control, that's authentic leadership. Every organization has its own culture, and the memo is where that culture becomes most visible. A civilized organization doesn't use vague, roundabout, or overly commanding language. They choose expressions that are clear, respectful, and actionable.
Read a company's memos, and you will sense how they meet, work, and decide.
Memos are not just administrative language, they're operational DNA.
When an organization changes how it writes memos, it's changing how it thinks, behaves, and owns its actions.
A good memo is not a product of admin, it's a reflection of identity. And thus, teaching memo writing is teaching cultural stewardship. In every short sentence, the organization writes itself. A good memo is more than a tool for conveying information, it is a structure for shaping behavior, clarifying expectations, and triggering initiative. When we write clearly, concisely, and with action in mind, we open up a communicative space that is safe, transparent, and respectful. The reader not only understands but feels guided and empowered to act. In an age overwhelmed by noise, the ability to write a memo that invites action is a quiet yet powerful form of leadership. If this topic helped you grow in academic, professional, or leadership communication, consider sharing it as an act of generosity.
A like, a share, or a subscribe can help build a community committed to clearer, kinder, and more conscious communication.